Hospice, Latin for host, guest, or stranger. The word hospice is from the same linguistic, the same family, same root as hospitality. My Webster's Dictionary says hospice is a home-like facility for the care of terminally ill patients. Welcome to People, Places, and Politics. I'm Patty Milne. There's a very rich history of this important social service that goes back even to medieval times, when hospice was looked at as a place of shelter and rest for weary or ill travelers on a long journey. The modern history credits physician Cicely Saunders with her work specializing in the care of terminally ill in 1948. She did eventually create the very first modern hospice, St. Christopher's Hospice in London. And then she brought the idea of hospice to the United States when she was visiting Yale University in 1963 and talked about the concept of holistic hospice care. Although the history of hospice is very rich, very full, we're going to fast forward today and talk about what is happening with hospice care right here in our community with the Willamette Valley Hospice. My guest is Dave Moss, a past president, a longtime member of Willamette Valley Hospice. In fact, I recruited Dave way back when because I did serve on the Willamette Valley Hospice Board myself. It was a really, really special a special time, and it meant a lot to me, and I learned a lot about hospice care. So just a real quick then to background on Dave. I'm sure some of our viewers are going to know you from the many, many things you've been involved in the community, including being a former Salem City Councilor. You are also, is it the chair of the board at CCTV right here where we are taping this, so the crew here know you well. Way back when I first met you, you were associated with the Association of Oregon Industries, the political scene, and you had also worked with House Republicans.
Yes.
And I know many, many other things you've done over time. But let's talk about hospice. Now, let's go back to 1978 when the Willamette Valley Hospice began. What's the story there?
It's amazing it began at all. A group of volunteers got together and they'd read about it and they'd heard about it, and they said we should do this in our community. And it started out literally with just some members on the board as volunteers, and volunteers providing care. They raised money almost with cookie sales and things, and they weren't able to afford a full-time director to run things, so they had a part-time director. It just started just out of a shoebox, almost literally. Since then, as any new organizations, it's had its ups and downs, but in the late 90s, it really caught hold, and it has grown amazingly. Yes, you did get me involved in it. It's one of the best things I've ever had happen to me. And since I've been on, it's an interesting thing. I pulled a couple numbers. There's been a tremendous amount of growth in the last 17 years. We started 17 years ago with maybe 50 patients on a daily basis, and we now have over 220 on a daily basis. Back in the late 90s, it had about $2 million in revenue. We're now well over $12 million of revenue annually. We've outgrown, since I've been on the board, we've outgrown 3 headquarters. So it's been growing, because we obviously, when you go from 50 to 220, you have to put on a lot of new staff, and that's not easy to find sometimes. We have to get registered nurses. We have 2 medical doctors who serve as medical directors. We get nursing assistants, we get social workers, we get spiritual counselors, and they all work, in physical therapists, they all work as a team. We haven't divided up in geographic teams, but the same group works together with each patient. And so it's before, where you had only 1 or 2 people going out to people's homes, now we have a much fuller program. And the key to the whole thing, and this is interesting, I don't think people realize this, most of our care takes place in the patient's home. And one of the real draws of hospice is that you get to stay home. and have your care brought to you. You don't have to be institutionalized. We do provide hospice care in the hospital. We do provide hospice care in nursing homes and other facilities like that. But the majority of it is done in the home with the family.
So talking about, it's primarily in the home, and that was always one of the aspects of Willamette Valley Hospice that I thought was particularly important and beneficial. But there is a Tokarski home.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that and what because Willamette Valley is primarily focused on in-home. Now that is somewhere though that people can go.
We had on a wish list for years a small in-house facility where people with no other resources could be cared for. And it's not just a matter of financial resources. We do not check finances when we accept a patient. If they can pay, they pay. If they can't, they don't. But we needed a place where someone who had no family, no family support, no one could come in and take care of them. They needed somewhere to be. And so Larry Tokarski came to us and said, I'd like to build a home. And we said, we would love that. By the way, we already have the land for it right here.
Gee.
So this was a match made in heaven, and he built, it's a 5-bed facility, it's not very large, but we do take in people who just don't have anyone that can help them. A lot of them are indigent, but not all. Some of them have insurance, some of them have resources, they just don't have family. And so the Tokarski home has been up and running for several years now. It's a terrific place. It stays full. And, you know, obviously we can't be 100% full all the time, but it stays pretty full. And it's been a godsend for treating the people that just have no other way to get the resources. I ought to back up a little bit and say, really, what does hospice do? Our goal is to enhance the quality of life for terminally ill patients and their families
And
both.
the families.
It has to be both together. We provide information, we provide counseling, we help people understand what is happening, what to expect. And terminally ill is defined as a diagnosis of fewer than 6 months to live. It's an inexact diagnosis, but if someone improves under our care and starts to go beyond 6 months, we actually discharge them back into the medical community. That's a success. And so we don't mind if someone gets better and lasts longer than 6 months. That's great. That's fine for us. But we do treat people anywhere from 1 day to usually a couple months. And, you know, we all face death. And what we try to do is just bring some dignity and grace and comfort to that. And it works pretty well. When you put in a team of spiritual counselors and nurses and social workers, that goes a long way to explaining what to expect in the next week. And the other thing we do is we look at all the medications of someone coming in. And when you reach the point where there's no cure, it's just a matter of working out the time and how it's going to happen, you can get rid of a lot of those pharmaceuticals. And you'd be surprised at how much better people feel often when their pharmaceuticals go from 20 a day down to 3 maybe. They just start feeling better. Now it may just be temporary, but that's one of the things we do is really make sure what they're getting and using is going toward their comfort, which is our number one goal. We have a couple other things we do that no one else does.
Good, talk about those.
Yes. We started up what we call a music therapy program. There actually is a music specialty of music therapy. People get college degrees in music therapy. We have 2 wonderful young women who both are certified in music therapy. It can take any form. They go out to a patient, and sometimes it's just a matter of playing some music that they liked from their past because it makes them feel good. But it also may be that they write music specifically for the individual. And we've had cases where the family has written the words and our music therapists have set them to music, and then they do a videotape with the patient, everybody singing the music. It's become a really popular
Now
part
that's
of our
something
program.
that wasn't there when I was.
It wasn't
that's
there, and we are the only
fantastic.
way. There are other hospices in town. We are the only nonprofit community-based hospice. There's nothing wrong with making a profit. I have a couple businesses that make profit, I hope. But for us, we aren't having to answer to someone else. We don't ask, can we afford to do this? We ask, is this the right thing to do? Then how are we going to afford it? So it's a different way to approach it, and that's very important to us. But that's why we have music therapy, because that was an important part of our program, which means we have to go out and raise money for that. It's not part of what the insurance will pay for or Medicare will pay for.
So Willamette Valley takes care of that within the budget, or is that
Yes.
or perhaps a family is grateful and they help out with it, the cost, or how does that work?
We don't ask for that
Okay.
directly. You know, this isn't the best time to be asking people that, and
Right.
so we try to be pretty cautious. But we have, I didn't run fast enough, and I was appointed chair of the development committee, so it's my job to put together programs where we raise money. And we have 4 or 5 initiatives at work right now out there, raising various size contributions through various mechanisms. And it's good, but we run an efficient organization, and so we can do the work within what we're compensated by insurance and Medicare, and sometimes run a little surplus. It helps pay for this, but we have to raise money because this isn't the only program we do for free. We do other things for free as well. We have a veteran assistance program, and we're very careful to identify veterans. And we have volunteers who themselves are veterans who go out and they sit and talk about the good old days in the military. And it's amazing. I can tell you very honestly that after you turn about 60, the military you did in your 20s becomes much more important for some reason. I don't know why, but it
and
does.
you are a veteran, so you
Yes,
understand
I
that.
understand that firsthand. And so our patients who were veterans, they smile when they start talking about it with someone who understands what they did. And so that's an important thing. We have a really curious little one. We got a grant from a national organization to work with pets. If a patient has a pet, we found out in interviewing the patients and the families, one of the biggest worries is not I'm facing death, it's what's going to happen to little Fluffy. And so we have a variety of ways we go after. We have volunteers that go in and they walk Fluffy and pet and take care of the dog even while we're still treating the patient. We also have worked out a program of adoption after the fact, and so they can rest knowing that that pet will be adopted. We've got people willing to take on that. It's really interesting. We still have to raise money for it. We just actually in September had our annual fundraiser for that. I call it the Walk and Wag, and it's really getting good. We also provide bereavement services for families. That's a big part of what we do. We have a special program. You know, it sounds like we do everything, but the fact is, this is a terrific organization, and we do a lot. We have a program we call Camp Mighty Oaks.
And I remember that.
That's right, and it's specifically for families that either have lost a child or they have children who have lost a parent. And it's a week-long camp with counselors and others in the same situation, and they all meet and they talk about what they're facing and how it works. And I can tell you personally, I wish this had been around in 1955 when I was 9 years old and my father died. It took me 10 or 12 years to realize what had really happened. This is really a terrific program, and these kids, you know, they're fine, but they've lost something, and it's really hard to understand how you move forward. And the surviving spouse also needs extra attention, so we do that. And then we have one funny little thing. We're cooperating with a local charity. If someone wants, you know, they don't need their car anymore and they want to donate it, we arrange for that.
Oh, that's
So
fantastic.
and the local charity gets the money. So it's kind of fun. We have all these things going, all these balls in the air, and they're all aimed at making the family feel better, making the patient feel better, and getting through it.
Well, you've talked a lot about all the different programs. There's also a huge volunteer effort. talk about that a little
Yeah,
bit.
very large. We have almost 300 volunteers.
Wow.
And most organizations in this town would die for that kind of
Yeah.
volunteer. And they do everything. The veterans that go out, there are people who come into our office and do office chores for us. But the most important volunteers are the ones who go out to the home and they just do what the family may need to have done that day, or they may spend some time there and allow the family to get out and go shopping or have some time off. We call it respite care.
Yeah.
They get a respite from the day-to-day of work. We have others that they do almost anything that can be done. Now, obviously, they can't replace a registered nurse and things like that, but there's a tremendous amount they can do, and we have 2 sparkling young women who are our volunteer coordinators, and they love their volunteers, the volunteers love them, and it's amazing. People just sort of flock in on this one. To have this many volunteers in what is
amazing.
a difficult program when you think about it. You know, as I said, we all die, and our patients aren't getting better. And it's very hard to work with that day after day, and so our volunteers and our staff are really very special, and that's important to us.
I have a friend who volunteers at a hospice, and I just admire that effort. Great. I don't know if I could do it.
No.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Not tried, not been tested on that, but I value the volunteers. That's
I was a medic in the Army. I keep talking about me, and I don't mean to talk about me, but I was a medic in the Army, so
It's
I understand
relevant. It's
I understand the
relevant.
medical field a little bit. You know, very narrow part of the medical field. I couldn't do this.
Yeah.
Even what I faced 45 years ago, I could not do what these people do.
My father too was in the medical in the Navy, and the experiences that he faced, probably very similar to yours. Just
But this is different. And
yeah. Along also with the volunteers, I noticed in reviewing some of this, you have volunteer opportunities for kids, like high school students.
we have volunteer opportunities for high school students. We get high school students coming in. And again, they can do a variety of things because we do a lot of training of our volunteers. Obviously, we don't just release them out there. We spend a lot of time finding what they really want to do and what they're
What
good
they'll
at,
be comfortable
what they're going to be
doing,
comfortable at, and it may be babysitting some children for a while.
Oh,
I mean, it could be just that.
Yeah.
That is important, and we tend to forget how little things are really important,
Yeah.
and so that's part of it. We have a new thing that I'm working on right now with CCTV and hospice is, if I can put in a little plug for CCTV,
Go right ahead.
we have a professional class studio and equipment here, right in this little facility. There are commercial stations in Portland that would love to have what we have here. And we are now setting up a program with Corbin College, Corbin University, excuse
Yes,
me.
university.
And they wanted to put in a program for learning communications and electronic communications and all this, but they were looking at the cost of the up-to-date equipment. And they came to us and said, can we partner up with you on this? But they need to have projects for their kids to work on. And so I put on my hospice hat and said, you know, I know hospice can get several projects that these kids could do for them and make things better for hospice. So we're working on that. It's just starting.
Good,
Very early.
good,
But
very good.
we're looking for a whole bunch of new volunteers out of Corbin University coming over and doing video programming for
That's
us.
probably a really good fit
I think it's
with
going
that
to be great.
university. Yeah, great. So with all the new things, is there anything else new happening that may come, or
Well, yes, there are a
the
couple
future?
things.
What does the
Yeah.
future look like?
Well, another little program we're doing.
Little.
You know, nobody wants to talk about things that you really should talk about, wills and stuff like estates. But we need to talk about those things. And so we are sponsoring sessions with local lawyers, free, for people who have questions about wills, questions about estates, questions about how they put all that together. And they can get a good orientation session, no obligation. If they choose, they can either go to that attorney or not, or they can go to someone else. this is an important part of that part of life, and so
Yeah.
this is something that we are doing. It's a really a neat thing. It's been going for about 2 years. We're gratified that people appreciate that we're doing it, and we're getting bequests. That's not that's not why we're doing it, but it's a nice offshoot, and we aren't going to turn it down.
Yeah.
And so we are doing that. Well, we've set up a foundation now, foundation account, an endowment account, not a foundation, an endowment account. We're using other financial organizations, and we have gotten up to about $175,000 in our
Good,
endowment just
good.
in 2 years.
Wow.
So we're
that's
feeling very
good.
good about that. And I said we have several other initiatives out there. New things that are coming down, we're always keeping an eye on the federal government.
Oh, yeah.
Medicare is a
Regulations.
giant target back there, and it's kind of interesting because hospice can provide medical care in the last 6 months of life far more efficiently and effectively than a large medical facility can. And so some of the insurance companies are realizing this, and we're getting insurance companies sort of pushing people into hospice a little bit, and rather than, toughing out the last 2 months elsewhere. It's in their interests, and they are being very good about it. We're working with them. No one's being forced to do anything here, but that is something that's new that wasn't there even 6 or 7 years
Better
ago.
to be out in front of that than the
Yeah.
feds make a decision that you haven't been involved in trying to work through.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole area of medicine that's called palliative care. It's reducing the pain and the discomfort, whether you have 6 months to go or not, whether you might have 2 years to go. That palliative medicine is so similar to what hospice provides naturally anyway, that we now have a program of palliative care, and we have a staff for it,
Oh.
and we are getting referrals to it. It's not hospice, but it's certainly related, and we've had some people move from that onto hospice care, and it's a different mix of services and everything, but that's something new that, again, no one else is doing, and we started it up because it was the right thing to do. It was needed, and the insurance companies were very pleased with that because that helped them deal with it as well. There's one issue we haven't talked about that we
Okay.
should.
Go ahead.
It was around when you were on, and you were involved in resolving it, and I got the benefit of what you did when you were on, and that's the death with dignity.
Yeah.
Tough issue, and it's called physician-assisted suicide or death with dignity, whatever euphemism anybody wants to use. Hospice is on the front lines of this, obviously. What's fascinating, it's very seldom used. What we do is we provide information, and we will provide referral to a medical provider who will, in fact, be willing to work with the patient. Our staff does not administer any medication under that program. Any staff member who's uncomfortable with that is allowed off the team. So it's a very voluntary thing. But we do not provide the medication or the administration of the medication. That
But
has to
you're
be
doing you're allowing
what we do
them
is, if they request information, we provide the information, and if they request, we will refer them to a medical person. What often happens is people want to know about it, they want to sign up, and they work through with their doctor to do so, and they actually have the medication available. They almost never use it.
Good.
Just having that safety net, they relax because they're not worried now that
Yeah.
things are going to spin out of control. They know that if the pain gets beyond endurance, they have a way out. And that allows them to relax, and they tend not to get pain out of control. It's a self-fulfilling promise almost. Or it's really interesting. I don't think any of us expected this, but it's been one of the really good things that's happened, that yes, it's out there, and we will provide the information, but we want to help you in every way you can as you are now. And most people, we have a couple a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not very many.
No.
And we are the biggest hospice around here. I don't think anybody else
And
having
again,
more.
with how many people annually are you working with or
Ooh,
caring
well,
for?
It's thousands.
Thousands. So 2 out of
Yeah,
thousands is
yeah.
remarkable.
Oh, it's a tiny number.
Mhm.
And these are the most likely people to use it.
Yeah, because
it's-
they
and
already
it-
they
and
already
it's-
know
and
what
it's
their
minuscule.
diagnosis
Yeah.
is and that it's inevitable in a short period of time.
That's right.
But I would say that's a reflection of the quality of care.
That's part of it.
To
But
a
we'd
great
like to
extent.
think that,
Yeah,
of course.
well,
It's
of
all due
course.
to that, of course. But no, it's just. I think it's just psychologically. It's just eases their mind,
Yeah.
which in turn eases a lot of other things. You know,
It
mind
does.
over matter. I truly believe you can heal yourself to some extent. Obviously, not of everything,
Mhm.
but I think people last longer and more
Mhm.
comfortably just knowing
That everything's taken care of.
everything's taken
Yeah.
care of.
Yeah. Well, that was a tough discussion that we
Mm.
had back then. I can't even remember what year it was, but we had a lot of heart-wrenching discussions
Yes.
about what the policy would be, and I'm glad it is what it is.
The policy has remained in place
Yes.
unchanged since you were on the board.
That's
That's how well
fantastic.
you worked it out.
But it wasn't easy. It was difficult because you do have to consider everything.
Yeah. I know that the staff was involved in that, and the board was involved in that, and outside medical people, I believe, were
Yeah.
involved in that. And, yeah, it was a hard one to do. We came up with it.
Good. Are there any events coming up that you'd like to share? I know in the past there used to be quilt auctions and things like that. Maybe those are long gone.
You know, they really are that kind of fundraising. We've moved beyond it. It was a great thing. Those things were a lot of work.
It was, yes.
And the work per dollar raised is high ratio. We're doing better other ways, going directly to people, meeting with people, talking with them about what we're
Good.
doing, and we're getting good response that way.
Good. So speaking of that, would you give to the audience here contact if someone wants information on Willamette Valley Hospice, provide some contact information, location, how they
Okay.
can get info.
The current headquarters, which we are stretching right now, is in West Salem, on the corner of Patterson and 3rd. And you see, I'm too old now to remember addresses, so it's on the corner of Patterson and 3rd.
I did write it down. 1015 3rd Street Northwest.
There you go. That's exactly where it is. There's lots of parking, so and if you have any questions, you can go walk right in, and they'll give you pamphlets.
Good.
No pressure, just whatever you need. They're in the phone book. You can call them, or you have the phone number there probably. We have our website. Just Google Willamette Valley Hospice, and you're going to find us, and probably can get anything answered right there. And just pick up the phone, and somebody will talk to you about whatever question you have.
Whether it would be for a family member possibly needing care or to volunteer or just general information. Good.
Just 2 months ago, I got a call at home at 10 o'clock at night saying, "Help, who do we call?"
Okay.
Well, when I was home, I had the number, you see, so I was
Yeah.
able to tell them, and they were able to get taken care of at 10 o'clock at night. Not a problem.
All right. Well, we're going to need to sign off, but the phone number is 503-588-3600. Thank you, Dave, for coming
you.
and sharing.
Okay.